of the people, members of Congress and members of the U.S. Senate, must deal with. Then the president can execute the law. This is how our representative democracy works. Folks, this isn't brain surgery. If you're a legislator, you legislate. You pass law. You compromise to get things done. What you have to do now is you're under the gun, Congress. It's your turn now to do your job. President Trump, in a deft move, in a brilliant move, in my opinion, not only kept his promise, rolled this out in a way that I believe is compassionate towards the people who are being affected by it, and did so with a time frame for Congress to do their job, putting the ball back in their court, as it were. It's a brilliant political move. I gotta think that the president's administration, especially his new chief of staff, they are doing a phenomenal job in dealing with these issues. I think, for a fact, this shows a real change in the seriousness of the administration and how it's being handled. Make no mistake about it. President Trump was definitely contemplative, more so than any other decision we have seen thus far. We have seen, Survivor in the White House, who's going to get fired next. But now we have John Kelly there. And John Kelly seems to be committed to putting the House in order, and in doing so, made the president take the necessary steps to come to a thoughtful decision, a non-rushed decision. I think it shows a new White House, and this is going to be the norm from now on. We're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to reset, and we're going to take a look at the media reaction. You've gotten my opinion. Let's take a look at what the media said and how unhinged they've been throughout this whole thing. And then we'll talk about this topic a little more. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines. We'll be back right after these brief words. If you're a long-time listener of the show, or maybe this is your first time listening, you can probably tell that me and the gang here, we like to have our share of fun, whether it's on or off the air. We talk about 2-drink minimum radio and no medication Wednesdays or whatever day it may be. That's why when we found the people at Less Government, More Fun, we knew it was a match made in heaven with this show. Folks, we live in a time where government is out of hand. Our founding fathers did not intend government to be all-consuming in all parts of our lives. That's why we are telling you to go to lessgovmorefun.com, check out the website, check out the swag. What the people want is less government, more fun. Pass it on, make it happen.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save.
Your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines Radio is all about being right. No, seriously, it is. If you ever listen to Russ Gallo or me go back and forth on some issue, we always want to make sure that we remember who said what and when we said it. That's why we go to goonrecord.com. It's a brand new social media website. Challenge people on what they believe, whether it's in politics, sports, entertainment, finance, whatever. There's a category for you at goonrecord.com. Check it out right now. Tell us, what do you stand for? It's time for you to go on record. Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air. Gene Baradelli, back behind Enemy Lines.
Bring that down! Los dreamers no son criminales, son héroes.
None of these kids or people, whoever, or whatever ages they are from Sweden or Norway. They're all from these brown, so-called brown country. You can call it brown people who are not white, non-white people. So there's racism involved here, and why don't they just admit it?
If you guys could zoom in on the Statue of Liberty right now, I suspect she'd be shedding a tear. This is a dark day for our country.
You know, in talking about DACA and, you know, the repeal coming this week, there were days of coverage, if you weren't on Labor Day vacation, that you could have watched on all the stations, Fox, MSDNC, CNN, you know, the Clinton News Network and all that. And you could have listened to the imminent explosion coming from many on the left about this repeal. It's not like this was a surprise, like I said before in the show. This is something that Donald Trump promised he would do. This is something that he was elected on, his strong hardline stance on immigration. So to hear the left talking about this issue, you would think that this came out of this, just dropped out of the sky or something. And, you know, probably the biggest offender is, and I've seen him on news before, and I've seen him, you know, on different shows. He's an illegal immigrant who is a writer. His name is Jose Antonio Vargas, and he was on MSDNC, and he framed the issue of the DACA repeal like this.
Again, what's really at stake here is how do we define American in this country? That's what's at stake.
That's what's at stake. No, sir, that's not what is at stake. You see, how we define American is in our laws. We are a nation of laws. And while we are, you know, in my opinion, the greatest nation in the world, we're also the most compassionate nation in the world. You look at other liberal-leaning countries. Take a look at Canada. Just go to the north. See what their immigration policies are like. Go down south. See Mexico. See what their immigration policies are about. They clearly define Canadian. They clearly define Mexican. We have allowed our immigration law enforcement to lapse. There is no issue as to what an American is. It is very clearly defined in our laws. And while you're talking about feel-good, touchy-feely, what's an American philosophically up in the ether sort of deal and, you know, waxing poetic as writers do, those of us who live our lives by the law, you know, the laws that you're currently breaking, we have to live in the real world of definitions. Words have meaning, especially here behind enemy lines. We talk about this all the time. They have to have meaning. Otherwise, you can twist anything to be whatever you want it to be and live in that fantasyful world where you can wax poetic all day. We are not in the business of defining what an American is. We've already done it. We already know it. It's in the law. That is not what this is all about. What this is about is how to deal with a situation where the law has been broken. Not through the fault of the lawbreaker themselves, but through their parents. And how do we treat these people? How do we deal with these people? And honestly, what you're talking about in your poetical world of we need to fight for the soul of what an American is, I'm sorry. America is well defined. We just have to do a better job of communicating it to people who break the law. Let's let this guy continue, though.
Our moral conscience is at stake, and the president, look, I would like to believe that his heart, that he really is thinking through this.
Whoa, I gotta cut it off right there. Did you hear the little laugh? As if mocking about the president thinking through his position on DACA? Are you kidding me? I had to stop for that reason. But to backtrack a second, this is about the soul of the conscience of this nation. No, it's not. It is a simple legal dilemma. The soul of this nation is based upon its citizens, its legal immigrants, and the compassion of this nation to deal with situations where people, through no fault of their own, as I've been saying, are here in this country. This isn't a philosophical debate about what defines an American. Let's keep going.
He's really thinking through the fact that, if DACA gets taken away, my friend Brittany Packnett, a Teach for America, told me that 10,000 students in about a dozen states in this country would lose their teachers.
Yeah.
So undocumented teachers, right?
Right.
Nurses, there's about 80 undocumented medical students.
Right.
Across this country, right? There's, of course, undocumented firefighters, police officers, people serving in the military.
Yeah.
So we would want people to serve in the military and then be afraid that they may get deported?
Well, let me just say this about that. Those 10,000 students in over a dozen states that have teachers who are undocumented, you know what they would get in place of those teachers? Teachers who were born in America, who have the same certification, who have the same degree, may even have a better background. Teaching them. You know what would happen if those 80 medical students across the country who are illegal immigrants would no longer be eligible to become a doctor? Those 80 slots would free up for American students who work just as hard to get those slots, to become doctors. And all this, anecdotal evidence of undocumented firefighters who have to pass a test and have to say whether they're a citizen or not, or undocumented police officers who have to do the same thing. All this anecdotal evidence of all these people. So we're talking about teachers, 80 medical students. We're talking about 800,000 people is what we're talking about, folks. We're talking about less than, probably about 10% of the population of New York, People's Republic of New York City. That's what we're talking about here today. And to hear this gentleman who's undocumented himself, who's illegal himself, discuss this and wax poetic about it. And I understand he's advocating a position and he's fighting for what he believes is right. And I get all that. But come on, we are a nation of laws. Let's deal with the facts. We know who these people are. We know where they are. We know what they're doing. We also know that there will be disruption to their lives. There will be disruption to other people's lives. But that disruption can take care of itself. When people who are legitimately in this country get fired and replaced with another person who's equally, if not more qualified, there's a disruption and you move forward. When students have to leave school, there's a disruption and you move forward. Now, can there be a legislative way to grandfather in those medical students to allow them to become doctors? If Congress so chooses, there can be. But the way this is set up right now, and you can thank President Obama for this, he has thrown it all up in the air to be dealt with at a later date, and that later date is now, and President Trump is dealing with it. Let's get back to what this gentleman keeps saying, and let's see how poetic he can continue to get.
And look, I could talk to you about the fact that $1.2 billion in revenue would be gone because these undocumented DACA recipients are working. 95% of them are working in school. 54% of them, according to a study, bought their first car.
Oh, well, now I'm persuaded. I mean, if 800,000 people bought their first car, let's just keep them all. In fact, let's allow even more illegal immigration to come in, because that's all that amnesty does. This deferment of deportation action and legal proceedings and amnesty. Although this is an amnesty, this deferment. All this does is encourages more illegal immigration. But that's okay because they bought their first car. Folks, what happens is the cycle perpetuates itself. When people see that you got away with something, others think they can get away with something too. When relatives back in their home country see that you beat the system, you got into America, you didn't have to go through the normal chain of command, others think, hey, I can do that too. And it leads to more and more illegal immigration and more application for deferments. That's why President Trump is stopping it right here. And all that economic stimulation that the gentleman was talking about on the clip just then, just think about what Americans can do if given the opportunity for those jobs and for that economic stimulus. Just imagine what Americans can do by keeping that money here in America. It's widely known that many immigrants, legal and illegal, upon coming to America, what they